Hi, Kim.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Hello.
So nice to see some familiar faces, and I'm hoping to get to know a few others who are here.
We're on YouTube now. I'm going to put the live stream link online on the chat so folks can share it on Twitter. Hi, everyone. This is Mahabali from the American University in Cairo. Thank you so much for joining us for the launch of Socially Just Academia. I'm going to get us started, and I'm really looking forward to all that we're going to be doing together today. Starting on the wrong slide. All right. Thanks to Seleni for choosing this image that we've used on our blog post, and I've used it to sort of inspire my slides. My daughter thinks it's too dark, but I like it. Thank you for giving us permission to record and live stream. And before we get started, I just want to ask you guys, how are you feeling today? Type it in the chat, just a couple words about how you're feeling today. Oh, we have someone who's going to be doing live transcription today, and I just need to give her access to do that. So just give me a answer. Thank you, NG, for doing that, and thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, NG, for doing this, and thank you, Kim, for helping us connect. She can help out with this. She's going to try her best. It might be difficult talking too fast, which we probably will be, but we'll edit the captions after the recording. So please be patient with us with this. I know that the live captioning is helpful if you can't hear well or if your connectivity is not. We're trying here. All right, let's see how people are feeling. Exhausted but excited, happy to be here. TGIF. Friday's weekend for us. So yesterday should have been that, but we also had a public holiday, so we've had that like 2 days ago, which was good. Like everybody needs shorter weeks, I think. Pretty good. Yearning for community. Teresa, it's so good to have you here. So good to have everyone. There's so many familiar faces and also a lot of new people, which is wonderful. Everyone. Hi, Mahmoud. I'm sorry, I'm just picking a few people that I'm noticing. Okay, and for the first time, I'm gonna just give you a quick agenda. We're checking in, which we just did. We're gonna do a brief intro and networking so that you still get a chance to meet a few small people instead of this 100-person, 111-person, that's a nice number, grouping. And then the Socially Just Academia facilitators are just gonna do 2 quick round robins talking about challenges we're grappling with, because even though we all agree on our values, it's still kind of complicated to get started on this, and we're still grappling with a lot of things. And we're going to tell you where we're interested to start, and then we're going to ask you to choose where you want to start, and we'll go to breakout rooms and spend like a good half hour discussing that. Hi, Sarita. It's really early where she is, and she just came in. All right, and then we'll do some final reflections, hopefully. So this session is an hour and a half long. We're hoping to have time for you to get into the breakout rooms before the hour is over, because I know not everyone has an hour and a half. And we're still recording the main room, but the breakout rooms are not going to be recorded. So if it makes you more comfortable, that's also a thing. Just letting you know, there are more than 200 people signed up from all of these countries all over the world. I feel a great sense of achievement that there's someone from South America, because I don't have a lot of connections there. But obviously also a lot from the US and Canada and Egypt and South Africa, the Arab world and Australia and China, apparently. All right, before I send you to breakout rooms for a very quick networking activity, I'm going to ask you to hover over your name on the participants list. Just click participants and click rename. You guys find that? And then when you rename yourself, you can, if you want to say your pronouns so that when you go into the meeting room, people are using the right pronouns for you. If you want to say where you're from, if there's anything you want to say about yourself that you want people to take account when they're meeting you for the first time, you can do that. So I'm going to do mine. And to do that. And this renaming is really useful beyond what we're doing right now. Is are with a large group or a small group of people, and you want to put them in breakout rooms, you can ask them to rename themselves into where they want to go. So we sort of give them choice over where to go. So it has a lot of benefits. I'm gonna make my boss co-host because I'm just used to doing that. Hi, Hoda. Like I feel more comfortable knowing that Autumn and Hoda are with me in a place because they're people I share a lot of spaces with. Okay, I'm seeing almost no one renaming. Okay, a few people are starting to rename themselves. I'll give you a little bit more time. Ian is with us at AUC, so he's saying his department because that's usually what we do at AUC. We ask people to say which department they're from. So that might also be influences you. Some people are more focused on the pronouns. Some people are more focused on the location. So. All right. I think I will send everyone to breakout rooms, including the facilitator. So I'm going to be the only one here. If you find yourself alone in a breakout room, just leave the breakout room, come here. I'll be here for you. And what else? I think the maximum number of breakout rooms is 50. I'll make that like 40. So you have 35. Okay.
Did you mention what we're doing in the breakout rooms?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I forgot to mention. Thank you. Just send you out into a room alone in the dark. So all I'm asking you to do is just for 5 minutes, share with others why you're here today. So just talk about why you're here today. There'll be 4 people, so about 1 minute per person, just to make sure everyone gets a chance to talk. And then you'll come back here and we'll get started. But it's, you know, like when you're in face-to-face, you get a chance to chat a little bit before things start. So. All right, I'll see you back in 5 minutes. And Inji, you can come back if you want. You're here to.
Sounds good.
If you like the breakout room, you can stay there too. It's not a problem. All right. I'll see you guys in 5 minutes. So I don't see how I'm feeling today. I'm frazzled, but excited. It's going to be fine. Hi. Oh, Daniela, you just came in, right?
Yes, I'm just sorry, I'm a bit
get
late.
a chance to get into the baking room. No problem. So instead of being in the breakout rooms, I've got Angeles, Mendoza Summit, Daniela, Erwin, and Noor. Can you guys share with each other? Why are you here today? Daniela, why are you here today?
Oh, why am I here today? Because I'm interested in socially just higher education. I think that is what binds us all.
Hi, Kate.
Just quickly start my video.
Hi, I was the only person in my breakout room.
Okay, that's all right. So why are you here today, Kate?
Oh, hey, I am here because I love the idea of what this is about. And I also love that it's international and it's people all over the world. That's a wonderful thing.
Thanks to have you. Hi, Erwin, how are you?
Hi, good to see you. Early in the morning here, but it's a lovely day. Yeah, I'm here because, well, first of all, I just want to hear what people around the world have to say about this topic, and I love the diversity in my own classrooms, and I want to be able to better appreciate and understand and honor it, and in many different dimensions that I'm still learning about.
Thank you.
And I'm just wonderful to meet you all.
Thank you so much. Noor, were you my student, or are you a different Noor? Hi, Noor. Do you want to share? Hello. I can't hear you. Angelus or Angelus, do you want to share why you're here today? Noor, if you can't speak, you could type in the chat.
Yes. Do you hear me?
Yes, I do. Hi.
Okay. Hi. Sorry, I joined late. I'm still working.
Okay.
So, I was trying to finish something, but basically, I like the idea of a more social just education system. I work at the IHE Institute for Water Education in the Netherlands, and we have students from all the world, mainly developing countries.
So how do we pronounce your name? Is it Angelus or Angelus?
Angeles.
Angeles, okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, I am from Mexico originally.
Okay, thank you, welcome. Chandel or Chantel, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Do you want to tell us why you're here today?
Hi, yeah, sorry, I just woke up, so I might be a little bit like.
Thank you for waking up for this.
Yeah, I wanted to be here. Yeah, I'm just interested in the work that this is about. I work with George Felicianos, and we are doing a lot of work on social justice in the academy and education more generally. And so I'm just interested in hearing other people's perspectives on this as we develop this work together. So yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Thank you, Shanda.
Thanks.
And Noor, do you want to try again? We couldn't hear you the first time around. Hi. Noor, I can hear noise coming from your side. Do you want to try to talk? Oh no. Unfortunately, I can't hear you. Maybe you did type in the chat and I didn't see it. No, not seeing it. Sorry. Okay, I'm just looking through the participant list. It's almost time for everyone to come back. They've got less than a minute. Does anyone want to add anything before we bring everyone else back? You guys came in late, so I'm sorry you didn't get to choose whether to be recorded or not, but we started recording a few minutes ago and live streaming to YouTube. And if you want to share it. Okay, so Noor Hakim is saying, I'm here because I'm interested in radicalizing academia. Thank you, Noor. Hopefully you're in the right place. Okay. Oops, what did I do? Yeah, okay. I just need to check in on the time. Okay, they've got 19 seconds left to come back from the minute. Oh, Lee Wolf. Hi, Lee. And Karen Dimanche Davis. Hi. Can you guys hear us? We're just sharing about why we're here today. Other people are in breakout rooms. I'm not sure if they just came in or they dropped out of their breakout rooms. Lee, are you there? I need to check the waiting room to let people in, and I'm trying to find it right now. Okay, time to close the breakout rooms anyway. Okay. Lee and Sean are in the breakout in the waiting room. They should be coming back. They should be coming back. Okay.
Hi, everyone.
So welcome back, everybody.
Hello.
I hope you
Hi.
had enough time. I hope that was enough time to share. All right, so we'll just remind you about what Socially Just Academia is. We're an open, networked, long-term project. So it's not just this event. If people are missing this event and watching the video, we'll be doing more events. Hopefully listening sessions, conversations, workshops, and maybe even some asynchronous interaction in between, because we don't have to wait until we see each other again to work together, right? And find community. We hope to dismantle oppression and promote decolonial and racist practices in academic institutions, research practice, curricula, teaching practices, whatever we're all interested in to promote a socially just academia. And this kind of arose as a continuation of a conversation we had in June 2020, which was on Equity Unbound, and the event was called Inclusive Citation, Inclusive Academy. And right now we're hoping to develop a global community, but hopefully having some kind of mix between global and local impact as well. We know there's different contexts everywhere. We know this is a journey and the struggles may be different, but there's still possibility of learning from each other. And we hope there will be space for people to share and learn from each other, whether you're at the beginning of your own journey in your local context, or if you have more experience to share with others. There's a lot of people in this room that I know have done a lot of work in social justice, and I'm sure we have all a lot to learn from each other. These are the facilitators. I'm not going to spend time giving everyone's bios. Their profiles are linked on our website. We have a good variety from Egypt and South Africa and the US and Canada. And a lot of the ones from the US are of Global South origin. And we're going to go through a very quick round where Mia is going to help facilitate. And I'm sorry to the facilitators that we're going to have like 2 minutes for this one and 1 minute for the next question, but you're going to have time to talk more in the breakout rooms. So it's a little bit crazy. But okay, go ahead, Mia. I'm going to let me just start with my challenge that I'm grappling with, and then I'll work on the breakout rooms and be quiet, okay? So my key challenge with coming into this project is that you want to be both aware of all the intersectionalities, but you also don't want to lose track of the decolonial anti-racist aspect of it, which is a very challenging thing to try to implement in reality. And I don't want to lose focus of reflecting, but I also want to be taking action all the time. Like I don't want to stay quiet while I'm thinking about what's the best way to go about it. So I know that whatever we start out with will be imperfect, it will only be partial, but we'll learn and we'll grow, and hopefully we'll be mirrors for each other. Okay, I'm going to stop here and leave it to Mia to facilitate.
Okay, I'm starting the timer on myself. I'm going to talk about the challenges I feel. Hi, everyone. I'm Mia Zamora. Challenges. I think academics are quite famous for talking too much. I think we have, in many ways, talked the equity talk, but we haven't necessarily walked the equity walk. So I'm interested in moving towards corrective action, but we also have to do that in a very thoughtful way, in an open way, with a lot of self-reflection. Also, I'm interested in how this work is going to shape up in an interdisciplinary context. How does a computer scientist do this work? How does a biologist do this work? How does an English professor do this work? How does a phys ed specialist do this work? How does a librarian do this work? How does staff engage in this work in an institutional context? So I'm thinking about that. And my last challenge is, and I'm doing okay with time, is what if our committees in the institutions that we work in, what if they're not representative in terms of people of color? What if the committee is all white people? How do we work around that? What are we doing regarding that? How do we make sure we're listening to everyone? And how do we don't want to overburden our Black colleagues, our people of color colleagues, etc. So that's a major issue. I think Jasmine's going to talk about that later a little bit. But those are the things that I see are challenges. So I've stopped on my own timer. I'm resetting it, and I'm passing the baton to Jose.
Muted. Okay, I was muted and I'm now unmuted. So my challenges or my concerns are really imagining justice through a liberation from theoretical colonialism. I'm incredibly becoming concerned with theoretical colonialism, which is a term that I have been using in the past few writing projects that I have. Which includes, I describe it as something that includes the lingering colonial debris in critical theories, despite their liberatory intentions and accomplishments. And as academics, we have used a lot of critical theories and we continue to use critical theories. But my concern has become the coloniality that's still inherent in it, that we still have to deal with, even though they are very well-intentioned. I have also, so some of the things that, I think about is how might a new theorizing exterior to modernity inform our contribution towards fostering a just academia. There is a lot of these theories that we apply, be them modernist or postmodernist, they're still within the very much modernistic ways of thinking and doing things. And so I'm wanting us to begin to look outside of that space to think about how will that help foster, this just academia. So food for thought in that group would be that in our attempt to label subversive notions and practices through theoretical lenses, we often fail to see the originality of the action and its corresponding with theoretical originality. That is the coloniality of theory embedded in our minds and academia in general, which leads us to assume that only the Marxists and the Foucaults of this world can legitimize subversion at a theoretical level. So that's pretty much what I want us to reflect on as we think about a just academia.
Perfect timing too. Kim.
Yes. I'm starting my clock as well. This is the radio girl in me. So I'm mostly challenged with making sure I'm seen. I feel like I have access to a lot of spaces. I'm on several boards, and sometimes it's really difficult to get them to decenter. And it takes a lot of energy, way too much energy to constantly say, hey, you're forgetting about this, or don't forget about this. Because think about this world that we're living in. Even people have forgotten what happened in May. The killing of George Floyd which was the catalyst. Because our news cycle is really difficult to keep up with at this time. So I definitely want to look at that. And I want to look at this power dynamic in academia. And so I want to try to share that space with students. And that means giving them the agency to be confident enough to take that and do something with it. And finally, I want to look at where I'm challenged with the role of media in all of this, not just from a media making perspective, but also from the media consumption perspective. So those are the things that I would like to unpack. I cede my 40 seconds.
To Jasmine.
Hi, everyone. So Jasmine Roberts, I'm at Ohio State in the US. So some of the most pressing challenges and concerns that I have a lot to do with academics being able to express their humanity and just how do we qualify emotional labor. I went through a very jarring semester last semester when many of us were transitioning online, and the experience that I had made me realize just how much we do not intentionally talk about emotional labor. We don't try to qualify it. We don't try to consider it in any regard. And just this constant, determined culture in academia where there's honestly a dehumanization that goes on. And we don't talk about mental health. We don't talk about emotional wellness. And especially for, activist scholars who, are doing a lot of this social justice work. In general, when people are doing social justice work and activism, the mental health effects can be devastating. And again, we're not talking about that enough. And so those are some of my most pressing challenges. And what does that look like depending upon one's identity, right? So there's a history, for example, or presumption that women of color should shoulder a lot of the emotional labor as it relates to social justice. Yes. And that, I'm tired of that. I'm not doing it anymore. And so how can we address that meaningfully beyond, okay, this is a conversation that we are having, because I'm very nervous about, again, the effects this is going to have on people who are doing this labor on an emotional mental health standpoint. So yeah, that's about it.
Great. Let's pass the baton to Leslie.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you're unmuted and it's all good now.
Okay, thank you. There's so many challenges, but I'll just focus on one that I've been working on for a number of years. I've been involved with the so-called open access, more recently open science. And what I see is that there's been a lot of uncritical championing of so-called open this and open that without really thinking about the underlying structures itself. There's this assumption that open is good in and by itself. And there's now increasingly this universal discourse about how to become open and this and that. And so I'd like to reflect a little bit more on how openness itself, when putting tag on to an existing problematic unequal structures, actually amplify a lot of existing and reproducing a lot of existing inequality in our knowledge institutions. So I like to, think collectively how we could rethink, the limitations of open and other way of think about knowledge co-sharing and co-productions, taking into account many of the other diverse communities' way of learning and sharing for centuries that we have not taken into account. So that is really what I'm interested in. Thank you.
Wonderful. How about Benita?
Hi everybody. Yeah, for me, I suppose some of the challenges that I'm grappling with is about, and maybe it's in conversation with some of what the other presenters have been saying, but for me, the question of how do we center Blackness? How do we center queer? How do we center women? You know, it's a politics of centering that for me is about a decolonial politics. And I talk about Blackness, or I talk about women, not as physical, not as something that you see, right? But it's a politics of knowledge, it's a politics of power, and it's a politics of being. And part of the reason for this is I'm tired of talking about inclusion. I keep on wondering, included to what? You know, what is the center that we need to be included to? Like, no, within South Africa, for me, we've been talking inclusion since 1994 in terms of the clear separation between, or not so clear, I suppose, apartheid and post-apartheid periods. It's a long time to be talking about inclusion, and we're still not included. So enough of that politics. It's a politics of centering that I'm interested in. I think secondly, for me, I'm interested in politics of I suppose rethinking and reimagining knowledge generation, right? And how we constitute the university, or what constitutes and who constitutes the university. The university, for me, has become in many ways a neoliberal institution. It's shaped through neoliberal policies, neoliberal ideologies. If you just think of career trajectories for academics, it's all about the individual system of accumulation. Like, how many publications do you have? How many students do you supervise? How many got A's? How many got all of those sort of things? There's a lot about quantity and quantifying notions of success. And so for me, it's about critiquing that and rethinking and reimagining alternative ways of being and thinking and power around knowledge, and where knowledge resides and how it is circulated.
Perfect. Finally, Tutaleni.
It will help if you unmute yourself. Hello, everyone. I can just say yes to everything that has already been said so far as the challenges that occupy me and that I'm really interested in. I'm broadly interested in issues of equity, representation, and access, issues of privileging knowledge, knowledge systems, and ways of knowing. But lately have been really obsessed with conversations. Conversations we're having about these issues, conversations we're not having about and around these issues, how we are having those conversations, who should be involved in these conversations, and who should be leading these conversations. I'm also interested in words, sort of reflecting my communication background. Do we mean the same thing when we use the same words? Because I think broadly we can all sort of really agree on all the issues that were raised as important, but I'm not so sure if we agree on what those issues are and how we mean by them and how we want to address them.
Thank you. Last but not least, Doris.
Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with everyone and listening to each of my colleagues' perspectives. I gather I can add that the greatest challenge for me is grappling with the unsettling and disorienting reality that to truly decolonize our institutions would perhaps require the end of higher education as we know it. That there is this deep recognition that decolonization is not this single event or prescribed fact, but it's a complex and contested amalgamation of spaces that's going to require the undoing of centuries of power structures, of hegemonic structures. And when I stop and consider all of the sectors in which perhaps there can be a greater engagement is certainly higher education. And within our institutions of higher learning, there has and remains just a plethora of symposia, forums, conferences that are indeed addressing decolonizing higher education. And I just wonder, where are we going? Will there ever be this moment of critical synthesis where we can take into account all of the scholarship, the wonderful talks, our engagement now? Are we going to see a seminal moment where we can actually see credible change, where we can actually begin to move forward with seeing these actions take hold for tangible results? Yeah.
Excellent. I think we've heard from everybody on challenges, and there's so much food for thought already.
I'm so impressed that everyone.
Yeah.
We really thank you so much for that.
Yeah, and also the timing problem didn't really become a problem.
All right. So this second round is really, participants, please concentrate for this second part, because this is where people will say what they want to discuss in the breakout rooms. And I'm going to ask you to say which breakout room you want to go to. And then you can also move yourself around with this new feature of Zoom. So if you have the latest version, you can move yourself to whatever room. So if you start in one and you realize it's not the one you want, it's not rude. Okay? Let's decolonize everything about these kinds of spaces. So we're going to ask each person to say, I'm gonna just do it in the same order that I've got here, and then I'm going to go back to do some other stuff. Is that okay, Mia? Can you see that
Yeah,
order?
that's fine. No,
Order?
the order is something that you're looking at, but I'm not sure I can see, but that's, oh,
Really?
I see.
Oh,
Now I can see. Now I can see.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm going to exit and write a summary of what each person said they're going to talk about.
Okay. So Benita, can you share what you think you would like to work on within this context, one particular thread?
Yeah, I mean, it's linked to what I said, so I want to ask questions about if we talk about centering Blackness, centering queer, centering women, what are the different questions that we then ask of a socially just academia, right? Because we're not going to be asking anymore who needs to be included. So what are the different questions that centering allows us to do or enables? So I think I'm going to be focusing on that. And obviously, I think linked to that is thinking through the university as thinking of alternatives to the notion of university.
Brilliant. Doris?
Yes, I would like to focus specifically on the sector of cultural institutions such as archives and museums, which remain throughout the West as hegemonic structures of knowledge. They are greatly responsible for the dissemination of how we see the world, how we see humanity. And while there has been a great deal of research, which I have been very much involved with for more than 20 years, that speaks to the power specifically of archives, I would like to address where are we now in terms of their decolonization.
Excellent. Next, Jasmine, will you speak a little bit about what thread you want to take up?
Yeah, so like I was kind of saying earlier, I would love to talk about how do we recognize emotional labor and how that looks like for different people. And just talking about mental health in academia, we still don't talk about it because of the culture, right? So I would love to really hone in on that, especially during the time of the pandemic. We need to talk about mental health.
Excellent. Jose. Jose? Maybe.
Yeah, I was muted. I was muted. I figured that. So yeah, I had thrown the question already. So how might the new theorizing exterior to modernity inform our contribution towards fostering a just academia? That's the kind of reflection I'd like us to engage in. And this is what includes the theoretical colonialism and the whole colonial debris and in critical theories.
Excellent.
I'm going to call it colonial debris. I think people like that.
Yeah.
Just so people remember it easily.
Mhm.
Okay.
Excellent. Kim.
I think I want to see if we can tackle the media component, again, from a media consumption and a media making perspective.
Excellent. Mhm. I'm seeing so much, you know, the prongs are making themselves evident in a way that's really energizing, and I think I'm excited. Leslie.
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, I like to interrogate more critically this notion of open, and then to see if we can then come to some understanding of how open can be extended to include and recenter excluded knowledge that academia has traditionally ignored. So how do we use open to recenter excluded knowledge?
Excellent. There's so much good stuff there. Maha, you're next.
Yeah, this is my turn. Yeah. Okay. So mine is about how do you do a socially just curriculum or course design, like decolonize, make it anti-racist. So I'm going to be in the main room, just so you guys know when you're moving on. Okay, go ahead, Mia, it's your turn.
Oh yes, it's my turn now. So I am very interested in the co-production that Leslie brought up when he was speaking earlier, co-production of scholarship with students and a kind of public-facing scholarship. But I'm going to embed that in what I want to take up as my theme, which is linguistic violence and linguistic justice. So, you know, many students have heard, "You sound Black. You're speaking incorrectly." They've gotten the red pen marks all over their paper, and it's shut them down and has made them feel like they could never participate in any forms of learning. So I'm interested in the ways in which students and other emerging scholars are navigating and negotiating linguistic and racial identities across the academy, and what we can do, what practices we can sort of take as mentors, that we can re-strategize as mentors. You know, I think that the traditional approaches to education and in academic writing don't account for the emotional harm and internalized linguistic racism that many students have experienced. So I'd like to ask questions around that problem of dehumanization and marginalization. And I'd like to think about pedagogical approaches that intentionally center linguistic, cultural, racial, intellectual needs of students of color.
Tusaleni.
My 2 words of the day are conversation and exposure. Interested in the conversation around these issues that we're discussing, especially around again, representation, access, and different ways of knowing. And how do we expose and engage with others who might not be of shared mind to bring about the change that we need.
Okay, so what I've done right now, just so everyone knows what's going to happen, if anyone has questions they want to ask, they can type them in the chat. But to create breakout rooms right now, I've got breakout rooms named after each of the facilitators. I'm going to stay in the main room because I'm the host. So if you want to talk about my topic, you can put 7 before your name, or don't rename yourself, I'll just keep you here. And if you have a slower internet connection that keeps disconnecting with breakout rooms, again, if you stay in the main room, you should be okay. So there are rooms for each person. The topics that they said they would talk about are written there. I know we all don't have capacity, I think, to store 9 ideas in our brain at the same time. There's also a 10th room, which is a discovery room. Like if none of these topics is what you want, but you want to talk about something else and you want to find other people who have alternative ideas, feel free to go there. And there's a quiet room. So if you want to stay with us, but you need a break, I know you could just mute and leave the computer, but I'm just mimicking what it would be like in a real life situation. So you don't feel like you have to leave us, you know. I'm just going to go back for a second. Just so you know, you can move yourself. So the new version of Zoom allows you to do that. If you're struggling with that, just come to the main room and I'll move you there. But if you can move yourself, that will allow me to focus with the people who are in the main room with me. I think we need to accept that even though a lot of us have similar values, it's okay that we want to start somewhere different. We don't all have to work on the same thing at the same time. If we all work on what's important, then the collective of what we do together will hopefully be useful. There are going to be Google Docs in a folder that I'm going to share with everyone right now. It would be helpful if someone can take notes so that the facilitator can focus on facilitating. And it would be great, anyone can edit those documents. So if you could add the names of all the people who contributed, so that if we create any kind of summary of what happens, we acknowledge who has contributed to this document. Only if you're comfortable, of course. If this is like going to be threatening or make you vulnerable in some way, then of course you don't have to do that. The breakout rooms are not recorded, so don't worry about that. And here's the Google Drive link. Let me post it in the, hopefully everyone is now comfortable with Google Drive, even if you weren't before the pandemic. So the digital literacy spike is going to be huge, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I'm going to move you to the breakout rooms again. Sorry, I'm showing you the breakout rooms again. Here we are. So Benita is for the first one. And it's about centering Blackness, queerness, women, and what are the next questions to think of through alternatives to universities. Doris is talking about decolonizing archives and museums. That's the second one. Room 3 is Jasmine on how to recognize emotional labor and mental health. I really want to go to that one.
Me too.
And Jose, I'm sorry, I wasn't totally focused on, I know what you talk about in general, which is modernity, and the term colonial debris, I think, struck people earlier. So that's the one I use. I'm sorry if I've misrepresented anyone's topics. Let me know if you want me to change it. Kim on media consumption and making. Leslie on interrogating openness to recenter excluded knowledge. Mine is about socially just curriculum, so anti-racist, decolonial course designs and curricula. Mia on co-production of scholarship with students and linguistic violence and justice is the main thing. Yeah, Kim, you can edit if you want. What are you doing? I don't know what you're doing. Tutaleni on representation and access and different ways of knowing. And then, like I said, number 10 is for a discovery room. If someone actually has a topic that they want to talk about already, I can create a new room for that. So I don't mind if someone wants to talk about something specific. Oh, wait, let me maximize this. I was just, because I was typing, but I'm done typing, so I apologize. It was tiny, wasn't it? Better? And someone, I think Kim copied it into the chat, right?
Yes, the information's in the chat.
Thank you so much.
Denali also added it.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to start putting people in rooms. Thank you to everyone who has been, oops, yeah. This will take a bit, so can anyone talk about anything until I finish doing this? We'll take like less than 5 minutes. But
there were a couple of questions.
Okay, go ahead, Kim and Mia, and take them and see who wants.
There was a hand up at some point.
Yes, that was me.
Yes.
All the topics are actually really interesting. However, I am. Is there anything more related to our local context in Egypt? This actually was a question for Maha. For example, people of color is not really a big issue here in Egypt. So
it's not the same issue, obviously. We don't have.
Yeah, but it's not the same. But we have other issues that we have other.
Or it's not an issue in your world.
No, of course it's in the world, but again, I'm staying here in Cairo. So what can I do to help my own community?
Yeah.
I'm really interested in learning what you have to say. It's again, all of the topics are really interesting. So.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that you can do, Ahmed. You could create a discovery room and others can come and sort of drop by and you guys can pick your own topic, for example.
That's interesting. So
yeah, that's an option.
I also think that José's session might be something that really sort of bridges your context with some interesting openings and ideas. So I would recommend that one as well. If you don't want to do discovery, Ahmed.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
So I think people might be wondering, just to sort of fill up a little of the administrative time, that Maha's amazing. Look at what she's doing. Isn't this incredible? She's like moving 104 people into different like digital spaces right now.
This would be so much easier in person.
Yeah, it really is, you know. But I just want to say one thing that's I wanted to just pick up on the thread that this is a long-term project, and Equity Unbound is a network that does a variety of different things, and this is one thread of those things. So I wanted to just extend a kind of invitation to everyone while we're waiting here, so that you understand a little bit of context about the network itself. We do things that are curricular, that is, that we sort of embed activities that you can just sort of pick up and do at a variety of different times. We have studio visits where we meet with really dynamic scholars and thinkers to talk about issues. All those issues include things like global citizenship on the web, intercultural learning, equity, data literacy, you know. So, and then of course we have this thread that we're working on together today. We also have a series of resources for pedagogical approaches to community building, especially during this time when we're all forced into an online context. So I just wanted to sort of use this moment to just make sure everyone felt invited to all those things that Equity Unbound does. And also to say that this is just the beginning. You've received the invitation and come, but you might have noticed it was a launch. So this is our launch moment, but we're going to continue to do this work and grow this work and evolve it as it emerges. So we hope that you'll stay with us in whatever ways you can, and also take back whatever you're learning into your local context, so that we're seeding the work in powerful ways in all parts of the world.
Okay, I'm done with the breakout rooms. There's about half of the people haven't renamed themselves. I think I made a mistake with one small thing, is that people who chose number 7, which is my room, don't really need to go to the room that's called Decolonize. So can you guys just come back after you went? I'm sorry, I forgot you didn't need to move at all and I moved you. But you can come back right away. I'll wait for you. And then everyone else who hasn't renamed themselves, it's possible that they want to stay, but it's also possible that they just don't know how to rename themselves or couldn't figure it out. So you should be able to see a breakout room icon at the bottom of your screen and be able to move yourself. So I'm sorry that I took so long to do this. It was a lot harder. Hi, Ramiz. Ramiz was my student, but is now one of my.
Hello, Dr. Ma.
I just want to say out loud too that I'm thrilled. I see many students, and I think that's a very important thing, that we have our students as well as colleagues from a variety of different sectors in higher ed, that our students are here. So critical.
Okay. So breakout rooms for 30 minutes, and I will allow participants to change their rooms. There is a quiet room and a discovery room and a facilitator's room, which doesn't have anyone in it right now. There's just 4 more people who renamed themselves, so I'm gonna change their rooms and then I'm gonna open. Okay.
I hope to share within the breakout room some documents. We have that capacity, right, Maha? I forgot.
Yes. So I
okay,
just,
good.
It's open. Right? Can you see it on my screen?
Yes.
I've got that folder, and I don't remember if I copied the link. Let me copy that again. Yeah, that's the link to the folder. So each facilitator has a folder, has a document in their name. Please, someone volunteer to help with the note taking. Some of the rooms are more crowded than others. That's normal, I guess. All right,
We're all set.
Let you guys go, and the 30 minutes you should come back automatically from.
Sounds good.
Zoom makes me keep saying it every time, so I'm going to give you maybe a minute to come back. Sorry?
Can you clarify how to join a room?
Oh, it's just going to happen. You don't need to do anything. You'll find yourself in a room.
It pops you there. It's like teleporting.
Yeah, I know. I mean, for the ones who haven't picked.
Oh.
You're gonna, if you haven't picked, you're gonna find, there are more people who just picked now. If you have not picked, you will find yourself in the, you'll find a breakout room thing at the bottom of your screen that should allow you, if you have the latest version of Zoom. Do you guys know what I forgot to do? Forgot to put the facilitators in the rooms. But the facilitators are also co-facilitators, so they should easily be
We
able to
can
move
find our
rooms.
room. Yeah, we should be able to, but still.
You could, but let me, I'm
It's
sorry,
good if
this
you
is
put us
taking
there.
so long. Oh my
No,
God, I'm
it's
never gonna
not
do this
taking,
again.
no, this is, you're amazing. And I think that, you know, for anyone who's ever been in the sort of, what is it? The driver's seat or at the helm, this is stressful stuff. And you're, you know, as always.
Yeah, and it's very hard to do it ahead of time because you
Finesse
can
the
do it ahead of time, but this wasn't gonna work. Okay, so if anyone just finds themselves in the wrong place, come back here. It's gonna be fine.
It's going to be fine. It's always going to be fine.
Yeah, inshallah. Inshallah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. If you just renamed yourself, I'm sorry. Just move yourself when it's time. Okay, I'll see you guys in 30 minutes. I hope you have a good conversation. Thank you for your patience. Okay. It's gonna turn a little bit quiet as people move. So if anyone is here in the main room and you want to go somewhere else, if you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, it's either going to be there as the breakout rooms, which is 4 boxes, or under more, it's going to say that. And then there's a few people in room 7 that need to come back. Benita, I need to make sure that I even put you in your room. And it's, yeah, Benita, you should be able to go to your room, supposedly. Oh no, okay, let me move you, Benita. You weren't assigned to your room. I'm sending you there now. Okay. All right, so people in the room talking about decolonial and anti-racist curricula. What I thought I would do is to ask you to do, I will move you in a second now for people who are left, but I need to give everyone else who's in the room space to think about, hi Nakafila, to think about something before I focus on moving other people. So I'm going to use a liberating structure called TRIZ. If you're not aware of the liberating structures, it's just liberatingstructures.com. They're a way to structure conversations a bit more equitably, but they are created by white Western men. So we need to decolonize them at some point. But for now, it's a really useful way to structure discussion, especially if there's a lot of people there. Usually I would put you into breakout rooms to work on it, but I think we'll do it individually and then share together in the document. Can I have someone volunteer to take notes in the document, please? If too many of us are editing at the same time, who volunteered? Sorry.
Kate.
Kate, thank you so much, Kate and I. Thank you. So find the document that says Maha's room or something. And the sequence of steps for a TRIZ is that instead of solving a problem by looking at our goal, we solve a problem by looking at an anti-problem. We list behaviors that reliably generate this bad outcome. And then we identify which of our practices resemble these, and then we decide to change them. So if we're aiming to create courses that promote and embody social justice, our anti-goal is how can you ensure that your courses or curricula promote and embody social injustice? All right, sit with that for a moment. So we're thinking opposites, okay? And I'm going to move people as soon as I get people to give. I'm going to give everyone 2 minutes to make a list of behaviors, practices, or activities which would reliably achieve the anti-goal. How can you ensure that courses we develop promote injustice? Some of you can type into the Google Doc directly, but I think if 30 of us started doing that, it's going to be a problem. Yes, so room 7 should be empty because, great, thank you all for coming back. So now you're all here, that's good. I'm going to move a few other people while you think about this question. Can someone keep time for me? Shanali, since you're here, can you just keep time 2 minutes so that we know? Michael's saying he's really good at the anti-goal. All right, so I know I'm going to mute myself while I think aloud here to move people. If anyone else needs to be moved, let me know. We've got 27 people here, so it's a large group, but it's like a medium-sized, well, smallish classroom, depending on where you teach. 30 seconds, Shanawi says. Five seconds. Oh, you're good, Shanawi. You're the perfect person for this job. Okay, I'm guessing those 5 seconds are up, right? Okay, so there's two ways to do this. We could either maybe share in the chat and then we'll copy what's in the chat into the Google Doc. And that way we've got everyone's names who contributed. I think that might be a good idea.
Mhm.
I don't know if people are typing into the Google Doc. I'm just gonna exit the slides for a second to see what's happening in Google Doc. I know Kate is taking responsibility for the Google Doc, so maybe some people are there.
People are there and typing right now.
Okay, and it's not gone crazy with the 30 people.
No,
Okay,
it's
great.
people are distinguishing themselves by text color and stuff. It's great.
Oh, awesome. So I'm just going to put a names of contributors thing at the top if you forget. Oh, it's so lovely. All the elephants and stuff and hyenas. I love it that it does that. Like that's how it distinguishes people. But no, this is lovely. This is looking great. Okay. Does anyone want to help me read out what's there? I guess, Kate, you're not really taking notes, so maybe you can help with reading out what's there then.
Sure. So the question is, how can we ensure that the courses we develop promote injustice? By assuming that all students are privileged, have good internet access, don't have jobs, don't have families to take care of, etc. By refusing to make space or room for the infinite variability of student needs, accommodations for disabilities and beyond. Never varying from the canon, also applies in STEM, standard intro texts. By ignoring privacy issues, not everyone can share their ideas, especially on online platforms, no matter how quote unquote secure they are. By ignoring the fact that passport privilege makes mobility hard for certain international students. By limiting the perspectives to only that of the instructor and limit the dialogue to one way. By exerting maximum control of all choices. By sourcing all content ourselves. In my fields of mathematics and computer science, requiring conformity to some vision of ability or access, accept that some courses are drill and kill, shut up and compute, sell the view of math science as an on-ramp to success in the current power system.
It occurs to me that maybe I can actually ask people to say out loud what they've said. I'm sorry, I didn't think of that to begin with. It's a really obvious thing to do because you're going to get exhausted.
It's okay.
And,
yeah.
and people might decide to add something as they speak. So I think this one is Michelle, right? Do you want to unmute and?
Sorry, yeah, sorry. Wait, let me turn my.
Sorry, did I get you on the headlights? Sorry.
No, I've been like just eating breakfast, so I didn't want everyone to listen to me chew. Yeah, so I wrote, you know, like when we are faced with the excuse of academic freedom used to justify why nothing can ever change in the course or the curriculum, and then the overall problem that in a university system in which you have that academic freedom, you also have the problem that no one can tell anyone what to do. So it can just go on forever, no matter how much you promote equity. People can just refuse to change.
Yeah. And this one is that Adam? Adam Zolkover?
Yep, that's me. I made a giant list and then just pasted it in, so I'm just gonna add a couple. My big one is assessing things that aren't in the learning objectives, like writing to a specific academic standard or being able to present when presentation skills aren't something that's taught in a class. And the other is assuming that knowledge only travels one way inside of a class.
Yeah.
I think that those are the two big ones that I would add to this conversation that haven't
I
been.
know there are people who are still writing. There's one that I think is almost done. Tracy.
Sorry, I was in I was in the document and I had to come back and find my Zoom.
Oh,
yeah, I suppose it's kind of overlaps with many others, and I think I mentioned assessment as well, because often in higher ed we assess the same thing twice or even 3 times, and then a person can pass it and then they fail it the next time, and then causes all kind of complications. But I suppose even the previous speaker just saying that we treat people the same and we don't think about variability at all, or this lack of willingness to change.
This one is well. Is that you? Like a wrong person. Right. Center ourselves as educators.
That was me.
Yeah. Do you want to say something? Hi, I think it's the first time we're on a synchronous session together.
Yes, I think it is. So I'm very excited. The centering ourselves as an educator is, I think, especially if we have a lot of privilege. I mean, but I think even, of course, if we don't have a lot of privilege outside of the classroom, as educators, we come into a hierarchical system. So we still have to decenter ourselves. But I think it's especially more important for someone like me, who won the privilege lottery, to constantly decenter, and then not knowing about students as people, which folks have already said. In my context, I teach high school. The big idea of academic freedom in the academy, the equivalent to that in high school is the real world. Like, it's not going to be like that in the real world, and so we have to interrogate the real world for, like, well, why is the real world that way, and why are we simply replicating the inequities outside?
So rather than getting them ready for the status quo, but like questioning the stuff.
Right, and critically examining our own outcomes and whether or not those outcomes, not only making sure that everyone passes the course, but also asking, like, well, is passing the course replicating that status quo?
Sakina, you are next.
Sorry, hi.
Hi.
Yeah, so I wrote quite a bit that I went before. Some of these things, of course, are happening where I am. The one thing that really gets me is the defining of inclusion exclusively. So therefore, not being inclusive and dismissing so many groups of people. And a big challenge is the lack of acknowledgement of different ways of knowing, and really focusing on typically white-centric and also Western-centric ways of knowing. I find that's an issue for myself as well as an educator in trying to decolonize my own mind in understanding, like, science of learning and psychology. And so in trying to embed that in my own curriculum, yeah.
Right. So you're from Yemen, but are you based in Yemen, or are you based?
No, I'm Yemeni, born in Singapore. Now I'm in Australia.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. Is it really late where you are? Like, what time is it?
Yeah, it's 10 past midnight.
Oh, thank you so much for staying up. And you're so, like, fresh as a lettuce, mashallah. It feels like you're wide awake. Thank you for that. I think that part about decolonizing our own minds, like those of us who are not white Western men, you still need to decolonize yourself because you've been with that dominant discourse your entire life, it's really, really hard work. Okay, Shanali, I think you're next. Or is it Daniela? I'm not sure. Shanali and then Daniela. Shanali, go ahead.
So all I was saying was just the idea that if we could distribute some of the traditionally academic roles, like creating tasks. So if you hold on to all those roles yourself, you create all the tasks, all the activities, all the assessments, then that's a way to make sure that you produce a course that's maximally unjust.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And Danielle, and Shanali is one of the liberating structures experts that I know from Africa as well, and we need to collaborate more in doing that kind of thing. Daniela.
So what all of you have written is just incredibly insightful and also so distressing to think about all these ways that, but I also think I just added that I think when I fail to engage in very intentional conversations with students about injustice and about justice, and in particular about the ways that the specific content in the curriculum and the disciplinary approaches to the study. I'm in communication in business, and when we don't talk about how that is part of the nature of the work that's been done, that contributes to injustice very explicitly.
Thank you, Danielle. And Daniela Gashago. I don't know if I'm saying your name right. We co-author stuff together, and I don't know if I'm saying your name right.
Fine, it's absolutely fine. Yeah, I think I've also, I mean, people have said this before, no reflection on positionality, no engagement with students, teaching a fixed curriculum, no contextualization, standardized testing, not seeing students and individuals, Western curriculum only, no critical reflection, no challenging allowed, setting up hierarchies, lecturing only, assumptions about students such as academic literacy, deficit discourses, students are at fault rather than the institution not adjusting to their needs.
Thank you everyone. So normally with Triz, we would actually be having a discussion around these, and we won't have time to do it properly because there's so many of us, but normally we discuss them and then we come up with a shorter list of the key things, but we'll do that asynchronously afterwards. I've got a student assistant who's going to help us do that. I'll come back to everyone who's participated to make sure that we haven't lost anything that you've mentioned. What we can do now is for just 1 minute, take a look at that list, especially the things that you didn't say yourself, and think about which things other people have said that resonated with you a lot. And what we'll do is I think we'll just share out orally a little bit, like which of these things resonate with you, and then what would you do to fix it in your own setting. I'm sure that among all these things, there might be things that you didn't realize you were doing, and when someone else wrote it, you realized, and some things you already knew you were doing, but you hadn't listed it. And of course, there's the things that you wrote yourself. And then some of us have roles like faculty development roles where you support other educators and thinking about what can you do to help other educators who don't want to be helped, obviously, but what can you do in your role other than in your own classroom to support that? And then what can you do in your own classroom? But also, like, what are the challenges of trying to do things like what Shanali was saying is like give students a lot of choices of what to do rather than let the teacher do them all. But when students don't know how to do it, then again, some of them will have a louder voice, for example, than others. So I'll just give you a minute to take a look at the list again. And then when you're ready to share out loud, maybe some of the things that you think are the most important to start working on and how you would work on them, that would be great. So I'll just give you a minute. I'll check the clock.
I was really struck by Shanali's thing of limiting, hang on, let me go there. Educators creating all tasks, activities, and assessments themselves. And I have totally done that this term, but the term is not over. So I have time to turn that around and give my students much more agency in that. So that's where I'm going to start.
Okay. Would anyone else like to share?
That stood out to me as well, particularly in right now in our context. We're in split semesters. So I have an 8-week semester with my senior English students, many of whom are, in California, we have many students whose English is not their first language, and our instruction, of course, is in English. And while, of course, we use strategies to support students in acquiring English, academic English, 8 weeks is not a lot of time to do complex tasks and do it all online when we're, at least in, where I am, we're used to being in the classroom with students. So I really appreciate that idea, because with the intention of making things equitable for my students, I've taken on all that work myself. And so what I need to think about is, as Kate suggested, my current term, my quarter ends next week. But in the next quarter coming up, when I have a whole new set of kids, I can think about how I can release some of that responsibility to them, while, as Maha suggested, making sure that there's supports. It's just a constant tension between not throwing them in the deep end of the pool where they're going to panic, and releasing them to be more independent and do that critical thinking and productive struggle on their own, because without that, they're not going to be, they're not going to be independent. And so it's constant tension between support and release of responsibility.
Go ahead, Adam, your hand is up.
Yeah, so for me, the people who, there were a couple of people who talked about treating the idea of real world uncritically, and I think that that's something that we need to do better. Michael, I think you had said something about this at the high school level. I work with a graduate program, and we are definitely guilty of that as well. We try to give our students scenarios to work on that are professionally relevant, but in doing that, I think that we end up reinforcing the status quo in their field rather than asking them to really challenge it in significant ways. I think that that's definitely something that we could do better on.
Mary, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I was really struck by Michelle's allusion to the academic freedom. It's a really frustrating phenomenon here. I don't know if that exists in many places besides the US, because I'm obviously very US centric, but to have no mechanism or a poorly publicized mechanism to challenge faculty when they're kind of off the rails, is really problematic. And so, I bumped into a course last year that was overtly racist, and when I reported it, to their credit, they took it very seriously, but had to take it to the faculty council because nobody could tell that faculty member what to put in their course and all that stuff. But it's, one of the challenges that she has is that, like she says, is that nobody can tell anybody what to do, and it's part of their contract and all that. And they just, my big concern with that is, why are we just accepting the contracts as they are then? It doesn't mean that the university should be able to just pull curriculum, but to have some kind of mechanism in place, and to who's on the faculty council that looks at these courses to determine these things. And so if we can sort of invert the power structure there, or subvert even the faculty council, those who do have the power, we're moving into an area that is much more functional in this regard. But if we can't get to a place where faculty are critically reflective of themselves and of their content, then challenging the status quo is going to be very, very difficult for us.
Okay, I know people with hands up. George, go ahead, George.
Oh, hi, good morning. Good morning for me.
Very early morning for you.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, because, and maybe it'll circle back to what I was originally going to say. The issue of white power always seems to float to the top, in that all our hierarchies, at least in the U.S., they get lighter and lighter literally as you go to the top. And there may be, we still have the structure of the 1 or 2 tokens that prove that you have diversity. That I don't think has changed in my adult lifetime, which has been a while now. So being able to challenge that in who are the decision makers on our major academic committees quite often are still white men or women, or but quite often white men. And I'm in the Cal State system for context on that, but so even if you raise the problem, such as, my gosh, this course is racist, yes, they're going to take it seriously, but what are they actually going to do? It's still within the framework of how would white people fix this, and it's really tough. That's really tough. But it kind of comes back to, I think, Adam's comments about assessing things that aren't really in learning objectives. And for me, it's the concept of hidden curriculum. It's knowing how college or the university really works, if you will, right? Which is also the real world aspect.
That's a really important one. I'm surprised it hasn't come up.
Yeah, and so I put hidden curriculum in the chat and forgot to put it back in the doc itself. So I'll drop it back in. But that's that aspect of. But Adam did mention specifically, which made me think of it. I'm pretty sure it was Adam's comment of assessing learning or things that were not in the learning objectives. So yes, can you present your is your work good? That's one thing, but can you present that work in a way that's acceptable? That's a very important part of the academy. I'll leave that as an example.
And the thing about hidden curriculum is that it can be really, really implicit, and you don't really realize what you're doing that could be creating injustice. And sometimes it is explicit to some people, but hidden from others, right? Okay, yeah. I want to use the last 5 minutes, and we can still keep talking, but people can also type. I've made a new item. If you're at the top of the document and you just click on this, it's what are 1 or 2 things you would do this semester that you could, like, within your own control, to do this semester to make your curricula or courses more socially just. And you can type, and then you can write your name or not, whatever you're comfortable with. And then sometimes if more than one person wants the same thing, then we just all say, oh, I'll do that, I'll do that, Yeah, I mean, I'll walk with this one, students design class sessions. This is, okay, Kate wrote it, and then I'll just say under her, I'll put my name under hers. Oh, Kate, did I just remove your name? I'm gonna put your name back in. Okay, and we can keep talking if folks want to say stuff out loud as well. I'm not seeing hands up, but I think you can just unmute and start talking if you want. Shanali, I'm curious, I'm sorry for calling on you, but Shanali, I know you work at a Center for Innovation, Learning and Teaching, right, at Cape Town. And I was wondering, do you also teach students or do you teach professors? Okay.
Yes.
So can you tell me hard. Oh, I know that. Trying to explain to administration that you teach teachers, you should also know about teaching students so that you can tell them.
I cannot. It's like a credibility issue.
Yes, right.
People about it if I don't do it too.
That's huge.
Sorry,
I lost my headphones for a second.
That said, I do have a slightly different group because I have a postgrad PG DIP. So I teach a postgrad PG DIP online learning design course.
Right, but still students.
Yeah, but I mean, there's still when staff become students, they become students all the way.
Yeah.
So I draw on that quite a lot, actually, I think. So I do.
But then it's a little bit easier to give them control over designing their courses because they teach as well, right?
Exactly, and I view that as kind of part of the critical takeaway.
That seems like, I think for graduate students, I think it would be crazy not to do that. I don't understand how people teach graduate students in different ways, but it's also got fewer problems. Or challenges. I say not problems, like challenges and barriers. But at the same time, they're also more set in their ways, I guess, than undergrads where they're more flexible. Maybe.
Definitely kind of postgraduates who come to you with a very strong professional identity and with very strong responsibilities outside of the classroom, often just want you to smooth the way and setting up different kinds of teaching and learning practices does not smooth the way.
Yeah.
It's quite disconcerting, I think, for many people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was just going through this wicked question in my head. And Chanel, you know the wicked questions as a liberating structure as well, but it's a thing that existed before the liberating structures, I think. And one of the things that I'm struggling with these days is how do you make students comfortable and at the same time challenge them to push them outside their comfort zone so that they learn and grow. And and that's the same with professors, especially in this pandemic. It's a pandemic and people are traumatized, and maybe it's not the time to be pushing them outside their comfort zone. But eventually, when they let themselves go outside the comfort zone, they might find a better way to teach online that meets their teaching philosophy. But it takes effort and time to get there. I'm closing the breakout rooms. Carissa, I haven't heard from you. I don't know if you're able to unmute. I know it's like really late where you are. And I'm not sure if you were here the whole time or you dropped off and came back.
Hi, Maha. Yeah.
Yeah,
I can definitely hear you. So thank you. I'm glad I could join.
Me too. Me too. I'm so glad you're here. So everyone else will be back. Do you want to add anything, Carissa? I always like to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I always want to talk about passport privilege. Well, yes, we have COVID-19 and a lot of universities went online. And to me, I have mixed feelings because it feels like COVID-19 is going to bring some justice to academia. I really believe that now that we live in the age of Trumpism, fascism, neo-Nazism, yes, I'm that radical. We really need to offer courses online for students who are deported right at the airport while they have valid visas. So that's my point.
Yeah. Thank you, Carissa. I know this is like one of your lifelong areas of advocacy.
Yes, and by the way, Canada is not any better.
Now I know that. Yeah.
Two rejection rate, 2 visa rejections, and I really believe that the diversity, blah blah, it's just a big show.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Carissa. Everyone is back. Yay, welcome back. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
We were abruptly interrupted.
I'm so sorry. I gave you a whole minute to calm down. We're actually almost out of time. It's getting dark here. We have 3 minutes before it's 4:30. I can stay like 5 extra minutes, but I hope everyone managed to take notes in their rooms so that Sarah Salam, who's going to be our student assistant, inshallah, here she is, I can see her, can help the facilitators, sort of make sense of what's in the documents. I hope people have left their names there. I'm going to send follow-up emails so that we can continue having these conversations. If anyone wants to share out real quick, like one person from each room, and then if people have to leave, I totally understand. I do not want you to stay longer than you can, and we will keep recording until the very last minute. So, but does anyone want to share from Benita's room?
I can say something, Maha.
Go ahead. Yes, please.
Yeah. I suppose we spoke about centering and what centering would mean in terms of multiple identities and multiple locations, not just those that I named, obviously. And then we looked at what, in some ways, it frees us up to not always having to talk about access or inclusion, because it can be assumed that we all have access, we're all included, right? So this is like moving beyond the notion of constantly having to advocate for yourself or people like you. And so again, the question of emotional labor then gets a whole lot less, because the time taken for us to advocate for ourselves doesn't exist anymore, because we all belong, we all center. I think the second point just quickly was around knowledge and how knowledge can be constructed in different spaces. So knowledge in dialogue was one of the points was made, is what does knowledge look like as it's being constructed in dialogue in that moment? Because when we move from that moment, it shifts and it changes, but then does it become embodied, and we store the knowledge within our bodies, and how do we then move that knowledge from that space in that moment? And part of the knowledge conversation was also about lived experiences. And often, I think for feminists have often argued that lived experience is knowledge. But within the traditional rigid notion of science, that often gets disregarded and excluded. So knowledge is broadly around dialogue, around lived experience, and around narratives and storytelling, and how people bring that or their knowledges through or with them in different spaces through the notion of storytelling and narratives. I'll end there.
I hope you guys took some notes. It's difficult sometimes to be in the conversation and take notes at the same time.
Yes.
Doris, are you still here? Do you want to share out something real quick? Like really, if anyone needs to leave, I know we're on time. We're passing the time. So whether it's the facilitator or anyone else in the room, I do not want to force anyone to feel like they have to stay. We will record whatever is left of this for whoever can stay, and we will report back on what came up in the breakout rooms. Doris,
there.
Hi.
Yeah, I had a very, very nice discussion with my participants regarding archives and museums as certainly cultural entities that are purveyors of knowledge and perhaps even conscriptors of knowledge as well. We talked more about one of the questions that was presented has to do specifically with how do we go about addressing certainly all stakeholders when we consider the vastness of stakeholder analysis within the institutions of archives, within the institutions of museums, specific to cultural artifacts that may have been conscripted by other countries and are now being held without the permission of the countries from which they have their origins. So certainly this is a major, major concern, certainly for Egypt, and for a number of countries around the world. As I mentioned, and which I was able to talk a bit more about, my ongoing research with Native American human remains, the passage of the United States Congress, the Native American Grave Repatriation Act, and the ongoing challenges that Native American tribes are continuing to face there. From that particular standpoint, it ultimately comes down to, I gather, a very, very basic question. Who then is controlling the very construction of knowledge? Who are the very purveyors of knowledge construction? And I think back to something that one of our colleagues, Jose said when we began this project, when he referred to the South African term, Ubuntu. That we must first recognize what it means to be human. That when I consider once again that how hundreds of thousands of Native American human remains could be packed away into drawers in the Smithsonian Institution as if they were forks and knives, means that they were not even considered human. And that one of the reasons why the ongoing arguments of Native American tribes to make the clear claim that they are representative of our heritage, our cultural heritage. And what right do you have to hold on to their remains as if they were forks and knives? So I think ultimately we're talking about what does it mean to be human? And when we recognize our humanity, then perhaps we can commence to think about the need for unbundling these institutions that have for so very long controlled hegemonically our sense of what knowledge is. And as I stated at the very beginning, we're going to have to unbundle what we see as higher education today. It's going to need to undergo a major unbundling for what we currently see the construct of what higher ed actually is. And that in itself is going to remain very, very complex. But I'm optimistic.
I feel like I should have given folks a break while I was doing the breakout rooms so that they wouldn't feel too tired right now. I'm sorry about that. Jasmine, are you still able to stay given all the effective labor you've been talking about?
Yeah, so we had a really great discussion. We talked about a variety of things as it relates to emotional labor. I really wanted us to try to figure out a tangible, like, what can we do to acknowledge emotional labor, acknowledge that we need to build a culture of wellness in the academy. And what I took away was that something very simple that we can do is just acknowledging, emotional labor, and acknowledging that emotional labor is labor, right? And also taking the time out to really advocate to include things that we're doing that might require more emotional labor, like that should count for something, right? In the US context, for example, service requires a great deal of emotional labor, and teaching requires a great deal of emotional labor. And someone in the room had said that teaching is duty of care. And so with that comes labor, and we should be able to value that, right? And so just acknowledging and valuing that type of labor is so necessary. Then also approaching emotional labor more so from an equity standpoint as opposed to an equality standpoint. Emotional labor for me looks very, very different for Mia. It looks very different for Doris. And so how can we make sure that we're approaching this issue from an equitable lens? And then also, I thought it was very valuable to hear the perspective of those who perhaps are supporting faculty, like instructional designers, faculty who are not full-time, like adjuncts, and just the unique challenges that they face as it relates to emotional labor. And so I really want to continue this conversation because I almost feel like this is like a tea kettle, this discussion about emotional labor, and it's just gonna bubble over. I don't want to see it bubble over, you know.
All the women are gonna
yeah. And so it's oh, thank you. Sorry, I didn't know everyone loved my shirt. Thank you.
Oh yeah, it rocks.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous.
So I just want a tangible, this is what we can do. This is what we should be advocating for our respective institutions. And then one last thing, someone had mentioned how at their institution, they do have wellness days, but they don't feel like they can take that time off or that wellness day.
The culture.
So there's a policy,
Yes.
but there isn't a culture. Yeah.
So it's almost like you feel even more, what's the word? Not bitter, but even more bitter because you can't take that day because you have all this work. It's like, here's the day, but we know we're piling up so much work on you. So, okay.
I just want to say one little thing here, which is that a lot of times institutions make the move to like offer well-being support, but it's just that. It's like a strategy that puts the work of taking care of yourself onto the laborer.
Onto you. It's not solving the structural
rather than
problem.
the structural problem itself. So that's a kind of critical labor literacy issue. And yeah, okay, don't get me started, right?
That was about it. Thank you.
Okay.
That's great.
So I'm gonna admit that I'm getting really, really tired. Speaking of all that, like I want to give time for everyone else to share out. So if someone feels really strongly that they want to share out, can you do it in like a couple minutes so that I can leave?
I think along the line of acknowledging emotional labor, I think we should all give Maha a Mia big hand. I mean, the cognitive and emotional labor that you put in.
Yes.
Remarkable.
Please. I will never forget what happened the half hour before we started this session today.
My mind,
the most emotional labor I've ever given my child.
I could see it, right? It's visible. And then I'm imagining it dropping into her hand. And then my mind went into this whole thing of like the cockroach metamorphosis, all of us sort of being like embodying this, like our humanness is, we're just cockroaches. I had all these things running through my head. The literary professor in me just went into a whole other realm. But I think, you know what? I'm just going to be quiet if anyone wants to say anything, but I can see that Maha is tired and maybe we should wrap up.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I will share back the Google Doc folder also so that everyone can see everyone else's notes, and we will do really hard work in whatever amount of time we have with the help of our student assistants. Mia and I will have student assistants. I want to also thank Inji, who has been doing the live closed captioning. She is a human being doing this for us.
Hey, no problem. I was happy to do it.
Who met me at 8 a.m. this morning to practice. It was my first time and her first time doing this. Thank you, Kim, for bringing Inji to us. And Inji, I hope you managed to enjoy the conversation.
I did.
You were typing frantically. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Take care, everybody. Take care.
Thank the
we'll see you
recording
again.
and the live stream. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.